Let me tell you something nobody told me before I walked into my first real job. I showed up, on time, did exactly what I was asked, kept my head down, thought that was the whole game. And I was so wrong. Not wrong like, oops, I made a mistake. Wrong like I was playing chess and everyone else knew there were hidden rules I'd never been shown. And the worst part, nobody was going to tell me. Not my manager, not HR, not that LinkedIn post about hustling smarter. So today, I'm doing what I wish someone had done for me. I'm breaking down the 12 habits that actually separate the people who build real careers from the people who just survive jobs. And some of these are gonna feel obvious in hindsight, which is exactly why they sting. Let's get into it. Here's one that took me way too long to figure out. Most people think their job is to do their work. And yeah, technically yes, but the people who actually move up, they manage their manager's reality. What does that mean? It means understanding what your boss is stressed about, what makes them look good or bad to their boss, and then quietly positioning yourself as the person who solves that problem. It sounds a little manipulative when I say it out loud, but it's really just empathy with a career upside. You're not playing games, you're paying attention, which, ironically, most people never do. Picture this. You're behind on something. You know you're not going to make the deadline. So what do? If you're like most people, including past me, you panic, you grind, you hope it works out, and then you deliver something half-baked at the last minute and apologize. That is the worst move. The people who get trusted with bigger things, they raise the flag early. Hey, I'm running into something. Here's what I'm seeing, here's what I need, here's my plan. That's it. 3 sentences. That builds more trust than years of quietly struggling and then blaming circumstances. Nobody expects perfection. They expect transparency. This is the one I really wish I'd understood at 22. Your professional reputation isn't built by one brilliant moment, it's built by 1,000 tiny moments that nobody's consciously tracking, but everyone subconsciously remembers. Are you the person who follows through on small things, who shows up prepared, who doesn't complain every time something changes? Those things compound, quietly, over years, and they also erode quietly. One habit of being slightly unreliable, just slightly, and people stop giving you the interesting work without ever explaining why. Drop a comment right now. What's one thing a coworker did that permanently changed how you saw them? Because I guarantee it wasn't one big thing. Okay, this one is genuinely underrated. Every organization has 2 org charts. The official one, titles, reporting lines, HR paperwork, and the real one, who actually influences decisions, who people go to when things are stuck, who the senior leaders quietly trust. These are almost never the same. The person with the VP title might have 0 actual influence. The executive assistant who's been there for 15 years, she might run the place. The mid-level guy who no one talks about, he's the one your manager calls before making any real move. Once you learn to read that invisible structure, everything about how to navigate your job becomes clearer, and you learn it the same way you learn anything important, by watching who talks to who when things actually matter. Here's something that sounds basic, but is shockingly rare. Most employees, good ones even, operate in response mode. They wait for a task, they complete the task, they wait for the next one. That's fine, that's a job. But the people who get noticed, they operate one step ahead. They come to a meeting and they've already identified the question everyone's going to ask. They see a gap and they propose a solution before anyone pointed it out. It's not about working more hours. It's about shifting from executor to thinker. And that shift is mostly just a mental one. It just requires you to care a little more than the minimum. I used to hate getting critical feedback. Hated it. My whole nervous system would activate and I'd spend 3 days internally arguing with whatever was said. And that's such a waste. Feedback, even bad, poorly delivered, annoyingly vague feedback, is free data about how you're being perceived. You don't have to agree with it, you don't have to like the person giving it, but if you can train yourself to receive it with curiosity instead of defensiveness, you get a massive advantage over everyone who just shuts down. Here's a reframe that helped me. Feedback isn't about who you are. It's about the gap between what you intended and what actually landed. That's fixable. That's just information. Time management gets all the press, but energy management is the real game. You can have a perfectly organized calendar and still be running on empty by noon because you started the day with the wrong tasks, had 3 meetings that drained you, and never had one moment of uninterrupted focus. The people who produce the best work, they're ruthless about protecting mental bandwidth. They batch similar tasks, they block time for deep work, they don't attend every optional meeting. They know that a focused 2 hours is worth more than a distracted 8. And before someone says, you're lucky if you even get to choose your schedule, I hear that. But even in rigid environments, there's almost always something you can control. And most people never even try. Nobody likes the person who only shows up when they want something. You know that guy who never responds to your messages, never shows up to team things, never engages, until suddenly he needs a favor and he's your best friend. Yeah, don't be that. Relationships at work, real ones, not fake networking small talk, are built in the in-between moments. The casual lunch conversation, the follow-up after someone mentions something hard is going on, the genuine compliment when someone does something well. This sounds like soft skill stuff. It's not. It's infrastructure. Because the day you need support, a reference, a vote of confidence, or just someone to have your back in a meeting, the only thing that matters is whether you built it before you needed it. This one sounds boring. It's not boring. It once saved my career, and I'm not being dramatic. Get things in writing. Confirm decisions over email. Keep records of what you were asked to do and what you delivered. Not because you're paranoid, but because human memory is terrible and organizations are messy, and when something goes wrong, people need someone to blame. The person with documentation survives that conversation. The person without it has to rely on, I'm pretty sure I remember, which is a terrible defense. It's also just good practice for clarity. When you write something down, you often realize the plan makes no sense. Better to find that out before you execute it. Most people in meetings are just waiting to talk. You can see it. Someone's making a point and the other person is nodding, but their eyes have gone somewhere else. They're already composing their response. They're not listening. They're just waiting for their turn. And then they say something that misses the actual point because they didn't actually process what was said. The counterintuitive move, listen longer than feels comfortable. Ask one good question before offering your take. Let the silence breathe a little. In most workplaces, someone who genuinely listens and asks sharp questions is rarer than someone who has all the answers. And weirdly, the person who talks less but more precisely almost always ends up with more influence, not less. Nobody thinks about this until they're already leaving. How you exit a job, whether you're fired, laid off, quitting in a blaze of glory, or just quietly moving on, will follow you. The world is smaller than it looks. Industries are smaller than they look. Your manager's old colleague is going to end up being your future client's friend. I promise. So exit gracefully. Finish your work, document handoffs. Don't burn bridges even if you really want to. Not for them, for future you, who doesn't yet know how interconnected everything gets. Your last 2 weeks at a job are part of your professional brand. Most people would treat them like they've already left. Don't. And here's the one that probably costs most of us the most money. Knowing your worth in theory is useless. Actually advocating for yourself, asking for the raise, negotiating the offer, having the uncomfortable conversation about your role, that's the habit that changes your financial life. Most people know they're underpaid. Most people also do nothing about it. Why? Because it's awkward, because they don't want to seem greedy, because they're afraid of the no. But here's what I learned the hard way. Your employer is not going to volunteer to pay you more. That is not how this works. The market doesn't reward people who wait patiently to be recognized. It rewards people who know what they bring, articulate it clearly, and ask for what they're worth. Awkward conversation? Literally a few minutes, potentially tens of thousands of dollars. Do the math. Look, none of these habits are revolutionary. That's kind of the point. The gap between people who thrive in their careers and people who just get through them isn't usually talent. It's not even hard work. It's a handful of habits that most people either never learned or learned too late. So if you're in a 9 to 5 right now, which of these do you already do? Which one are you avoiding? Be honest with yourself, and then pick one, just one, and actually do it this week. If this hit different, share it with someone who's just starting out or someone who's been stuck for a while, and I'll see you in the next one.